People disappearing into thin air in national parks, sometimes reappearing with no memory of where they went. In Montauk, people claim the government ran secret experiments involving psychic soldiers, time travel, and portals. And in 1943, witnesses say a Navy ship vanished and reappeared hundreds of miles away, with some of the crew fused into the metal. These are more disturbing signs that you're already living in a parallel universe. Over the last few decades, thousands of people have vanished in national parks and forests across North America. Some of these cases are a lot stranger than others and share some eerie patterns. The person disappears suddenly, often in the middle of a group, only to be found, if they're found at all, in places that had already been searched, sometimes miles away, sometimes in impossible locations like high cliffs or extra dense parts of the woods that would be super hard to reach even with gear. And in some of these cases, the missing person reappears with zero memory of where they've been or how long they were gone. Former police officer David Paulides has been collecting these cases under what he calls Missing 411. He specifically filters out incidents with logical explanations, so that what's left are stories that truly don't make sense. In some reports, tracking dogs have refused to follow the scent or get visibly spooked. Clocks act strangely, storms roll in out of nowhere, and in a few extreme examples, the person claims they were watched or lured by something they couldn't quite explain. One theory is that these people aren't just getting lost, they're slipping through cracks in reality. In the early 80s, rumors started circulating about strange military experiments happening at Camp Hero, an old Air Force station in Montauk, New York. The story went that there was psychic testing going on, time travel, and the opening of gateways to other dimensions. A few people had come forward saying they'd been a part of it, either willingly or as kids who were abducted into the program. According to these accounts, the government was trying to weaponize the human mind. They supposedly succeeded in creating psychic soldiers who could manipulate objects, see and hear things that were going on from very distant locations, or even open dimensional rifts. There's one story where they allegedly opened a portal too wide and something came through, something not human. Supposedly, they shut the project down after that. Another account describes a time chair, which let people travel into the past or future, but often came with disorienting side effects. Of course, there have never been any official documents that have confirmed any of this. It's easy to pass this off as an urban legend, but the thing is, some of the same people involved in these stories also had ties to MKUltra, which was very real and proven. So that's kind of given the Montauk Project a little more validity to some. As always though, what do you think? News of this just came out the other day. Last October off the coast of Yemen, a US Air Force drone captured something no one can really explain. A leaked video handed anonymously to Congressman Eric Burleson shows what he called an orb hovering over the water. An MQ-9 Reaper drone locks onto it and launches a Hellfire missile, one of the most destructive weapons in the US arsenal. These things are designed to shred tanks. But in the footage, the missile smashes directly into the orb and nothing happens. Journalist George Knapp described it during a hearing, saying, quote, "That's the Hellfire missile smacking into the UFO and just bouncing right off, and it kept going." The impact seemed to nudge the object slightly, even knock some debris loose, but then it just corrects its path and carries on fine. 3 military veterans confirmed what everyone was thinking. There's no human technology that can take a direct Hellfire hit and stay intact. The Department of Defense, when pressed, refused to comment. Burleson didn't speculate on exactly what the object was, but he made it clear that this was not normal. Did some kind of black hole open this girl's apartment? So this woman had a very strange incident involving her Apple Pencil. Seems there was some sort of glitch, but not the type of glitch tech support could help you with. So she talks about how she only has one Apple Pencil, has only ever had one Apple Pencil, and it's immediately recognizable because it was damaged by a dog. She also kept her Apple Pencil in the same place, the case on her desk by her iPad, but one day a second Apple Pencil suddenly turns up in her apartment and it's got the same bite marks. Now, if we're to assume this story is true, that is pretty dang strange, but stuff like this happens. I think we've all had an experience in the same kind of vein, finding two of something you thought you only had one of, personal belongings going missing and then turning up in a very obvious spot, stuff like that. What's going on? I can't say for sure, but is it possible that different realities briefly cross over and sometimes items from some parallel version of reality get left behind? I don't know. Back in 1995, NASA pointed the Hubble Space Telescope at what looked like the most boring spot in the sky, an area of darkness in the constellation Ursa Major, where there didn't seem to be anything at all. They left the shutter open for 10 days straight, and when the image came back, it shocked everyone. That quote-unquote empty patch of space was actually packed with thousands of galaxies, not stars, not planets, entire galaxies, each one holding billions of stars. The photo became known as the Hubble Deep Field, and it's still one of the most incredible space images ever taken. It's crazy how far away some of these galaxies are. We're talking about light that left them more than 12 billion years ago, meaning we're literally looking back in time almost to the beginning of the universe. And this was just one tiny piece of sky. Astronomers compared it to looking through a straw. They later repeated the experiment with newer cameras, creating the Ultra Deep Field and the Extreme Deep Field, which revealed even more distant galaxies. Some of the faintest smudges in those pictures are the oldest galaxies ever seen. In this next clip, a group of people are hanging outside when they notice something strange. It's the middle of the night, but all of a sudden the sky lights up bright blue, like it instantly turned into daytime. And then, just as quick, everything snaps back to darkness. And yeah, there's a storm rolling in, you can see heavy clouds and faint flashes of lightning in the distance, but this was clearly not a normal lightning strike. The whole sky lit up so bright it looked like the sun had risen for a few seconds before disappearing again. And finally, this strange video was posted by a girl who seems to be experiencing something mysterious in her backyard, in that it changes when she goes from her balcony to the ground floor. And then she opens the back door and steps outside, and so as you can see, the backyard looks totally different from the view we saw on the balcony. Where did all the garbage go? Now, assuming this isn't a hoax, which is always possible, this is a pretty strange situation. But speaking of garbage though, I don't know if she had a party the night before or something, but dear God, what is with all that trash? Don't live like that. Raccoons are gonna get into it. So there's this guy, Unicoso Braviente on Instagram, who's he's got a pretty insane story. He says that he woke up in a hospital in Valencia, Spain, completely alone. No clue who he was or how he got there. Even stranger, all the electronics read 2027. He found his hospital records and discovered that he'd been admitted on February 10th, 2021, unconscious with a high fever. Now, he's been posting all these short videos exploring the city, but it's always empty. Hospitals, police stations, fire stations, metros, airports, highways, all totally void of people. Of course, folks online constantly call him out for faking it, but some of his posts are pretty intriguing. He films himself in restricted areas, even taking cars, motorcycles, and jewelry. On March 23rd, he found an old Spanish Civil War bomb shelter. In it, he found a folder. And in that folder was some very strange information pertaining to him. It said he was trapped in some other dimension between 2021 and 2027. He'd been part of some secret mission. There was also blueprints for a time machine. The folder had equations and diagrams that eventually seemed connected to a particle accelerator at the Valencia Physics Institute. Now, it's all pretty outlandish, but it does make for a pretty interesting watch. Is this dude really posting videos from some alternate dimension he's trapped in? I'd love to think that, but if nothing else, it's very creative. Astronomers recently got an incredible look at a black hole called RxJ1131, and the photo they captured is pretty cool. The black hole itself can't be seen, but the superheated gas around it, called the corona, stretches about as far as our entire solar system. When researchers looked closely at the photo, they noticed tiny flickers in the light that didn't make sense. They were only able to see this level of detail because a galaxy sitting between us and the black hole kinda acts like a giant zoom lens. The galaxy's gravity bends and magnifies the light from the black hole, creating multiple images and letting astronomers spot details they normally couldn't. Lead researcher Mattis Ryback said, quote, "Within a few days of looking at the data, we realized, okay, this does not look right. The flickers weren't coming from the black hole. They appeared independently across the images. Turns out that individual stars in the foreground galaxy were briefly magnifying different parts of the corona. By studying these flickers in the photo, the team could map the corona and even get hints about the black hole's magnetic fields. So the point is, they're getting to learn a lot about this black hole through these images. And if we know anything about black holes, it's that we really don't know a whole lot. Black holes are incredibly mysterious. What happens to things that are pulled in? Where do they go? Do they connect to other parts of the universe? Could they be portals to parallel universes? At this point, we have no idea. It was just after midnight on January 21st in Chile's Patagonia region. Quiet, empty, middle of nowhere. A wildlife camera trap set up by the University of Magallanes to study animals suddenly snapped 3 photos in the span of 2 seconds. What shows up isn't an animal though. It's a set of bright descending lights. According to biologist Alejandro Kusch, quote, apparently these lights were initially distant, approached and remained in front of the camera, dazzling it in a movement that appears to be descending. Now, this camera wasn't near a road or houses, it was in a meadow far off from anything man-made. And these traps are designed to prevent tampering. They've got infrared, motion sensors, so this is pretty strange. But it's not the first time strange lights like this have been reported. Locals have talked about what they call bad lights. For generations they've talked about it, describing them as spirits crossing the fields at night. Scientists and UFO researchers have both looked at these photos. Some think it could be a rare plasmoid, kind of like a ball of plasma similar to ball lightning. Thing is, there were no storms, no conditions at the time that would have caused something like that. UFO researcher Freddie Alexis ran tests and calculated that if it was a distant flying object, it was moving at around 590 miles per hour.
Moving on to number 5. Fruit of the Loom. The famous underwear company was founded in 1851 and has been a household staple ever since. But it's not the spelling on this one that has people questioning if it's from a parallel universe, but the logo. As you likely know, the logo for the Fruit of the Loom is a bunch of fruit, an apple and some grapes, but some online argue that in the past there was a cornucopia present behind all the produce. The theory started a few years ago in 2018 when a Redditor started a thread in the Mandela Effect subreddit, and they posted a photo of what they remembered the Fruit of the Loom logo looking like, with a cornucopia behind all the fruit. And after they shared that, it turned out they were not alone. The Redditor even allegedly sent a DM to the Fruit of the Loom Instagram account to double check, and the employee who answered confirmed that no, the cornucopia had never existed, but that, quote, even some of us are still convinced it was a thing. So apparently, despite the collective groupthink, the Fruit of the Loom logo has never, to the best of anyone's knowledge, included a cornucopia in its 130-year existence. Moving on to number 4, Henry VIII. One of the most famous Mandela effects is the well-known portrait of King Henry VIII, painted by Hans Holbein the Younger in 1537. In the photo, the king can be seen holding a glove, except many people don't remember it being a glove at all. They remember it being a turkey leg. Now, some say that the pop culture portrayal of King Henry VIII is to blame for the confusion. For example, in the 1933 film The Private Life of Henry VIII, the king devours almost an entire chicken, and while portraying the king in a 2004 episode of The Simpsons, Homer Simpson also munches on a turkey leg. So culturally, we kind of have this image that he's just always eating a piece of meat, I guess. But not only that, historians believe that King Henry VIII may have been the one to introduce turkey into Christmas feasts. So in that sense, it would make sense for him to be holding one. Still, apparently, according to experts, the turkey leg phenomenon is not real. At least, not in this universe. Moving on to number 3, emojis. There are so many emojis that honestly, when it comes to the lesser used ones, I don't think I could tell you what there is or isn't an emoji of. But there are some out there who are sure that they have used emojis that apparently never existed. One of these emojis is a left-facing seahorse. According to one Reddit user, they posted saying that they are dead set and even remember where the seahorse used to sit on the keyboard, to which many other online users agreed that they too remember a left-facing orange seahorse. But interestingly, that is not the only emoji that people remember once existing. Apparently, there has never been a robber. There's never been a slice of pumpkin pie with whipped cream, a hiker, a toaster, or a swordfish. Yet there are many who claim that they have a clear memory of using these emojis. Do any of you remember using these? Do you remember any others that apparently have never existed? Coming in at number 2, Shaggy's Adam's apple. Scooby-Doo was a huge part of so many people's childhoods, but according to some online, there appears to be something missing from the photos of the old cartoons these days. Shaggy's Adam's apple. One Reddit user, CyberGothicChe, posted saying, quote, "As I recall, Shaggy from Scooby-Doo had quite a large Adam's apple. In fact, I believe it was used for comical effect, both when he ate something and also when he gulped in fear. His Adam's apple would move quite a distance, indicating the movement of his throat muscles. Others have also noted that Shaggy has lost his Adam's apple. This seems to be a recent Mandela effect, as I have not heard it prior except once or twice." Now, many other Redditors responded in agreement, saying that they too remembered this Adam's apple. And if I think back to the old cartoons, I wanna say that I remember it too. Now, here is where it gets a little confusing. So there have been tons of different versions of Shaggy, and apparently in one version, the 2015 TV series, he does have an Adam's apple, but none of the other versions show that. Now, some have wondered if this more recent version, including the Adam's apple, is why we remember it always being that way. But then others have pointed out that it would be strange to just give him an Adam's apple out of nowhere if he never had one, even going back to like the 60s. So was it just animators trying something new, or did the Shaggy from another universe slip into this one? And last up in our number 1 spot, Jiffy. Depending on who you ask, the famous peanut butter brand is either called Jif or Jiffy. These days we are being told it was never called Jiffy, but there are some online who remember things a little differently. In a Reddit thread about the Jiffy peanut butter Mandela effect, user Albino Raccoon posted a photo seemingly proving that those who remembered Jiffy peanut butter were not losing their minds. In the post, he shared both a photo and a video of a restaurant menu that advertised what they called a Jiffy burger, and beside it was a photo of the classic peanut butter jar with the word Jiffy written across. Other Redditors responded in support. For example, Berenstain Stain said, quote, "I noticed this change about 10 years ago. Obviously, I didn't know about the Mandela effect at the time, so I assumed they just rebranded it. 10 years later, I find out it never existed. I'd sure love to know how I saw it in my mom's kitchen throughout my childhood then." Now, some think that believers of this particular effect are misremembering Skippy peanut butter, but I mean, what do you guys think? Team Jif or Team Jiffy? Starting us off at number 10 is the Berenstain Bears. So growing up in the 90s, this one was a classic. It was both an adorable children's book and also a TV show, and I mean, it was just a great story about a family of bears and a memorable part of my childhood. However, you would think, being so memorable and all, we would all be on the same page about how it was spelt. Apparently not. The Berenstain Bears falls victim to the Mandela effect because despite what many remember, the name Berenstain is spelt with an A, like stain. But many, including myself, would put money on the fact that it was Berenstein, like with an E. The first time I read this one, my brain broke a little, and I still have a hard time with it. But let me know, which spelling do you guys remember? Was it an E or with an A? Moving on to number 9, the Monopoly Monopoly Man. When you think about Monopoly, you probably think about 10-hour games with your siblings that end up in tears, screaming matches, and somehow wanting to play it again, but you also remember that the Monopoly Man had a monocle, right? Apparently not. According to the company, photos, advertisements, and even giant balloons of the Moneybags character, he has never had a monocle. Not once. Yet still, so many people claim to have seen him sporting one for many years. I mean, it all just feels wrong. What parallel universe got the monocle Monopoly Man? Because apparently it wasn't ours. Moving on to number 8, Skechers. Another parallel universe Mandela effect in the spelling department is the popular shoe brand Skechers. Most people agree that the brand Skechers spells their name S-K-E-T-C-H-E-R-S, mostly because, well, it makes a lot of sense, but also because that is how a large amount of the population remember seeing it spelled. However, in reality, or at least in this version of reality, the brand name spells it without a T, so S-K-E-C-H-E-R-S. Now, of course, some people attribute this Mandela effect to just a bad memory or you being a kid and not paying attention to things, which is totally fair, but there are many adults who are sure they bought shoes and the brand spelt the name with a T. So how do you explain that? I don't know, man. What do you guys think? Which one do you remember seeing? Next up at number 7, Pikachu. In the 90s, Pokemon was pretty much the biggest show there was. And if you ask just about any 90s kid, they will likely tell you that they remember Pikachu having a black end on his tail. But apparently, we are all in the same fever dream because the black tip on the end of Pikachu's tail never existed. Ash's Pikachu, along with all the others, had black ends on the ears and a brown base on the tail, but the tip was just plain old yellow. Now with this one, there could be a little bit of a reason aside from a possible clue of a parallel universe as to why we all have this collective memory. It has been proposed that because Pikachu's earlier evolution, Pichu, actually does have a black tail, our little brains remembered that and assumed the black part stayed, which might be one option. But the parallel universe theory is way more fun, so I'm gonna stick with that. Moving on to number 6, Abe Vigoda. Although Abe Vigoda will always be famous for his role in The Godfather, it will never be his biggest claim to fame. That's because in 1982, Vigoda was reported dead by People magazine. The only problem? He didn't actually die for another 30 years. Even crazier is that despite him still being alive and well 5 years later, a local newspaper in New Jersey reported him dead again. Naturally, this became a long-standing joke among comics. In fact, during a roast hour, comedian Jeff Ross said, "My one regret is that Abe Vigoda isn't alive to see this," which was followed by Vigoda jumping up in mock anger from his seat in the audience and shaking his fist at Ross. Thankfully, he seems to have had a good sense of humor about the whole situation, but still, how can not one but 2 companies declare and publish that a man has died who is very much still alive? Well, some think that's because he might have actually died in a different reality. Interestingly, when the actor actually passed away in 2016, reporters were hesitant to pick up the story just in case it was an error.
My scar is on the wrong side, posted by Charming Medium. This will sound weird, but I had to share this, so I'll explain. When I was very young, I was diagnosed with leukemia. I'm now cancer-free, thankfully, but back then I had a port cath installed. It was on my left side. It was always on my left side. Once it was removed, I had a scar on my left side. I don't know how or when, but the scar is now on my right side. I can't even begin to explain how. About 3 years ago, I remember looking at my left side and being unable to find it. I looked around to see where it may have moved, but I couldn't find it. I eventually forgot about it. And sometime last year when I got out of the shower, I noticed it. It was on my right side. I asked my grandmother about it. I asked what side my port was on. As expected, she said it was my left. And she was just as confused as I was about it being on my right side. It still bothers me. And I think about it sometimes. It makes me uneasy in a way I can't explain. I always joked about the whole glitch in the Matrix stuff, the Mandela effect and everything. I don't know what to think anymore. Posted to Reddit by Balthazar, she writes about a disturbing incident she had in class that led to a series of disturbing dreams. It started around the time I had just gotten into high school. So around the time I was about 12 to 13, I guess. It was register period on the first day back after school holidays. We all wait for our names to be read and each of us reply. The teacher reads out a name and nobody answers. Out of nowhere, I get this feeling like someone just ripped my stomach out and replaced it with ice cubes. I find it odd, but I can't shake the feeling. Anyway, about 5 minutes later, another new student enters the class and my jaw almost drops. Except for having red hair, she could have been my twin. The teacher sits her near me and I can't stop staring. She notices me and looks just as astonished. We begin a conversation, but the uneasy feeling stays with me. About 10 minutes later, the principal walks into the classroom and I freeze and clutch the desk. Here it comes. The teacher notices and walks over to the principal. They lean in together and he whispers something to her. She nods and he steps forward facing class. "I'm sorry, class, but Miss X," the girl not present at register that morning, "has passed away over the holidays. She took her own life." I tuned out for the rest of what she said and just started crying uncontrollably, and that set off the rest of the class. The dreams started after this. I cannot say why, as I don't know. To go into each and every specific dream would be insanity. It's very detailed. Let's just say when people I have had contact with, no matter how briefly in life, are about to die, I dream their deaths about 3 days beforehand. I will simply state that it is not possible to be mere coincidence based on how many people's deaths I have dreamt. 2 colleagues I have worked with, 3 grandparents, 1 great-grandfather, 1 friend's grandfather, 2 school teachers, 1 lady I met briefly for 5 minutes one day at work, at least 3 friends, all dead within 3 days of my dreams. Make of it what you will. This next post is called "I May Have Saved My Dad in Another Universe." It was posted by Karina Nebula 89, and it reads, "My dad died a year ago, and a few months later, I had a dream that felt as real as reality, being wide awake. He was alive in that dream, and I was very confused about that. I remembered the police report I read. He died in his apartment, luckily, seemingly in his sleep, and the police had to break in. He lived in a social house building in which they checked the tenants daily, and when he didn't open the door, they called the police. I remembered the time of death on the police report, and in that dream, that time of date had not happened yet. Another reason why this dream felt so real. I could see dates and everything on my phone clearly. Everything was logical, and time passed normally, like it would while being awake. But the time was approaching. I made a plan to get him to the hospital, but he was taking his sweet time getting ready, and I was getting anxious because I knew the time of death was soon, but he did not really get why I was getting so serious about leaving. Eventually I checked my phone again, and the time was right after the time of death on the police report, and my dad was still alive and well. I was baffled. He still went to the hospital, but while he was on the way there, I woke up. This next post is from Witty Turnover 5585 and reads, "So I'm scrolling YouTube a little bit ago and see a video titled The 11-Day Disappearance of Agatha Christie, and I thought it was a mistake, so I watched the video and a few others to see, sure enough, she was only missing for 11 days. But I vividly remember my favorite show growing up, Unsolved Mysteries, having an episode about her disappearance. And in this episode, she kisses her daughter, walks out the back door, and vanishes, never to be seen again. I thought at the time it was weird because I'd learned about her in school and had to do a book report at one time. So I searched for this particular episode, and there is one of her, but again, she was only gone for 11 days. I think I skipped universes at some point because that's not the history where I'm from. Anyone else have something similar happen? Next up, we have a post by Naoiyyii. Don't know how to pronounce that. It's entitled, My Maybe Experience in a Different Universe. It was in the middle of the night and I had just woke up. I don't know why I woke up, but I was up. I felt weird. I felt like it was super quiet, like too quiet. I know it was the middle of the night, but it was weird. I felt like everything was down in scale, like my room was smaller, my bed was smaller, and everything was. I was so confused. It was also pitch black outside, like no lights at all. It was weird, and I started crying and ran to my mom's room. My mom was looking at me weird, and she asks me, what's wrong? I told her, I don't know where I am, with a crying tone, and she just looked at me like I'm crazy. She told me I can lay with her if I want. I was 11 at the time, and I won't forget it. I swear everything was too quiet and dark. When I woke up, I felt completely normal, and it seemed like nothing had happened. My mom also, for some reason, didn't even know I went into her room that night. But maybe she was just too tired to remember. And finally, we have a Reddit post by EqualStance99 entitled, Shirt Suddenly Went Missing and Then Appeared a Few Days Later. Hi, I've had a few encounters throughout my life that are mostly explainable using logic. However, I cannot find any explanation to this experience. I took some pants and shirt out of my cupboard and put them on my bed to get dressed. I turned around, closed the cupboard, but when I turned back around to get dressed, the shirt was just missing. I searched everywhere, but I just couldn't find it. Yesterday, the shirt appeared back in my cupboard, neatly folded, as if I had never touched it. I am positive that I didn't miss it, because upon its return, it was on the top of all my shirts, and no other one is that color. I am beyond bewildered at this simple yet unexplainable occurrence. And we're starting things off with a very eerie story posted to Reddit by Flarengo, who writes, This happened about 15 years ago. I called my friend up and he wasn't home, so I left a message on his answering machine. I said, hey, it's me. Sorry, I missed you. Call you later. Bye. And then I hung up and left the house. I made no other calls. Later that day, he called back and he says, wow, that was quite a message you left. Who is that girl you were talking to? And I was like, what are you talking about? I wasn't talking to any girl. Well, as it turns out, the message didn't end after I said bye. I had to go over to his house and listen to this message a few times. After my initial message that I did leave, as quoted above, there was a slight pause and it continues on for another 30 to 40 seconds or so with me talking to some girl. It was my voice, but a conversation I never had with a girl whose voice I didn't recognize. You can compare it to the message I know I did leave, and the two voices were indistinguishable. Not just the voice, but, talking mannerisms. It was my voice. Also, references to my occupation and activities were the same. Basically, in this conversation, I was talking to this girl about going skiing, but I had to go down to my shop and work on a car first, which totally correlated to me. Then the message just stopped. It was recorded on one of those digital answering machines that recorded the message to a chip, so there was no tape I could have taken and analyzed, unfortunately. Also, neither I nor my friend had party lines, so that's not an explanation. It was very freaky. I can't explain it. This next post was by Ninix Time, who writes about a time he may have seen parallel universe versions of his own family. The story goes like this. Around the age of 11, my family decided to go and visit my grandparents, and while we were there, I decided to go out and play around for a bit. They lived in a flat in the middle of the city. They had a road that had stores and a car park on the right, and had enough space for me to play around with my friends that lived there. As I got down and ran to that car park, a car went past that nearly crashed into me, and in that car, there were 3 passengers. A woman, her daughter, and a male driver. As I dodged that car, they looked like they had no emotions whatsoever and looked really dull. And as I focused into the car, the male driver was my dad. Very easily distinctive. And the car was our car. Same color, same car plates, same everything. I instantly ran to our car, thinking it had been stolen, but our car was sitting right there. I turned around to follow the car that nearly hit me, but it was no longer there. I ran upstairs to my grandparents' house without knowing what to do or what to say. Luckily, my sister was right by the door, and I told her the story and what I saw. She just laughed, telling me that my dad hadn't left the house yet. Next up, we have a post with the heading, Sudden and Short Shift into Parallel Universe by BB Shuri, which goes as follows. I was very much in love with a guy, and one day we were hanging out in his car, just chilling. He was telling me a story about his nephew who had a schizophrenic episode or something, and I was just listening, totally into the story, when suddenly I found myself sitting in a different car with him. This specific car was an old timer, and I had a wedding dress on. He had on a tuxedo. I remember feeling so happy and elevated, and he was a little bit grumpy because we were waiting for someone and there was this time pressure. We had to be at the venue. The scene lasted maybe 5 seconds, but everything was so real. I could feel the air, the atmosphere. I could feel my wedding dress, the temperature, the emotions, everything. I remember looking outside the window and seeing that we were parked beside a building and the person we were waiting for was in the building. The building was on a hill surrounded by nature. In a snap, I was back in the regular car with him right at the moment he was finishing his story. I have no idea what he told me. At the time, I didn't know what the frig just happened, but now I can maybe see it as a glitch into a parallel universe where we did get married. Next Reddit user is NYZ312, who discusses a very strange incident when they may have died and shown up in another timeline. They write, I've never really discussed this with anyone, but thought this may be the place to at least see what you think. I was driving down a street that is somewhat busy, 4 lanes, 2 each way, and there was a light rain. I came to a light that I wanted to turn left, across traffic. There's no dedicated turning lane. I waited till I thought it was clear, but just as I turned left, someone came around the inner opposite lane and I could see we were going to collide. I closed my eyes. The next thing I knew, I was on the street I intended to turn on, 2 blocks up on the side of the street, just sitting there, no collision. I gathered myself and went on, but I think about it a lot. Salar de Uyuni is the largest salt flat in the world. People say when you're standing in the middle of it, it barely feels real. Looks to me like one of those Windows desktop backgrounds you'd have in the mid-2000s, and I don't mean that in a bad way, just this place just looks breathtaking. Like I just hear ambient Brian Eno music when I look at images here. For most of the year, it's this massive stretch of solid, dry salt, totally flat, pure white, almost nothing breaking up the horizon. It looks like the surface of another planet. But when it rains, the whole thing changes. You get this thin layer of water that settles on top, turning the salt flat into this near perfect mirror. Suddenly the sky is reflected on the ground and there's no clear line between up and down. You can walk across it and see your own reflection moving below you. Along with the clouds, sun, and whatever else is overhead, it honestly looks like heaven on earth. And that mirror effect is so precise that satellite agencies sometimes use it to calibrate their instruments. But for anyone visiting with no visible landmarks, it's hard to judge distance. Some will say it almost feels like you're floating between 2 skies. And the flatness makes it almost impossible to tell how far you've walked. There's nothing quite like this place. Socotra is one of the strangest places on Earth. Not because of any one thing, it's because almost everything about this place feels off. If you ever wanted to visit Pandora from Avatar, this is probably as close as you're gonna get, on Earth, at least. The island is part of Yemen, but it broke off from mainland Africa millions of years ago. And in that time, it's developed a completely unique ecosystem. And people say unique a lot to describe things. That really does fit here. About 1/3 of the plant life can't be found anywhere else on the planet. The most famous example is the dragon's tree, which looks like a giant umbrella and bleeds red sap when it's cut. Now that's just the start. There are bottle-shaped trees, bizarre shrubs, weird-looking reptiles and birds that evolved in total isolation. Even the coastline looks kinda strange, with pale beaches leading into rocky cliffs and caves carved into limestone. You walk around and get the sense that someone shuffled together a desert, a jungle, and like a sci-fi set. At least that's how it's described, and that's what I can see looking at it. I've never been. I would absolutely love to go, though. Feels like it belongs to a different version of Earth entirely. And local legends talk about how ancient sailors would arrive here and then think they'd found the edge of the known world, and it's easy to see why. Lake Hillier is bright pink, It's not kind of pink. The place is unapologetically Barbie pink. It sits on an island off the coast of Western Australia, surrounded by dark green forest and blue ocean on the other side, and the contrast is just ridiculous. There's no like slow transition here. It's just this sharp line between pink and then you got everything else. And the water stays pink even when you scoop it into a bottle. Scientists think that it's caused by a microbe that releases a pigment under certain conditions, but no one's completely figured this out. The lake's only about 600 meters across, no rivers feeding into it, and nothing around it that looks even remotely similar. It's completely harmless too, you can swim in it. You can't swim in this next place though. The Danakil Depression in Ethiopia is one of the most extreme environments on Earth. It's brutally hot, with temperatures regularly hitting over 120 degrees Fahrenheit, or roughly 50 degrees Celsius. The landscape here looks almost like a planet that's still forming. You'll see sulfur springs that glow this neon yellow and green. Bubbling and steaming acidic pools are everywhere, and salt flats are cracked into these sharp, jagged patterns. As you can probably imagine, the air smells like sulfur and salt, and there's almost no plant or animal life except for tiny organisms. Some scientists actually come here to study how early Earth might have looked. Others use it as a stand-in for what alien life might deal with, on other planets. Because nothing about this place looks stable. The ground is always hissing and smoking, and it feels like it could change shape overnight. I kind of imagine it smells like farts, but you'd have to tell me if you've ever been. Flag Geyser in Nevada wasn't supposed to exist. In the 1960s, a geothermal company drilled into the ground looking for energy, and then they accidentally tapped into a pressurized spring. They capped it, but the seal didn't hold. Hot, mineral-rich water started pouring out, and it just never stopped. Over time, those minerals built up into this mound, and algae took over, turning the geyser into this multicolored thing that you're looking at now. Multiple sprouts constantly spraying out hot water. I mean, this thing is indescribable. First of all, look at the colors, the reds, greens, and yellows. It's shaped like something you'd see in a coral reef. It's not huge, maybe about 12 feet tall, but it sticks out like crazy in the middle of this dry, flat desert. Looks like it was grown in a lab. Something went wrong. Unfortunately, it's on private land and it's not generally open to the public, so most people only see it in photos, but it's very real and it's still changing. So if hippie tie-dye somehow became a place, it would have to be the Grand Prismatic Spring in Yellowstone. This is the largest hot spring in the United States and easily one of the most colorful. From above, it looks like this giant, trippy eye. Deep blue in the center, then rings of green, yellow, orange, and red moving outward. Each band is filled with different types of microbes, each one thriving in a specific temperature. The center is near boiling, crystal clear, but as the water cools near the edges, different microbes take over and change the color. The air is full of steam here, and that constant haze makes the whole thing almost look like it's glowing or breathing. You can't get too close. There's a boardwalk that keeps you at a safe distance, but even from there, it just doesn't look like it should be real. You're staring at a pool that's basically a living chemical reaction, all laid out in these perfect rings. Looks pretty incredible. Well, this place looks absolutely nuts. It's like a landscape Dr. Seuss would draw. What you're looking at is the Zhangyi Dangxia landform, and yes, these striped hills are entirely natural, formed over 24 million years as layers of sandstone and minerals were pressed together, then pushed upward by tectonic movement. Wind and rain sculpted the sharp ridges and valleys, but the colors, the reds, oranges, yellows, and blues, all arranged in these beautiful stripes, it's amazing. At sunrise and sunset, the entire landscape seems to glow, just exaggerating the already surreal look. There's no blending or soft transitions here. It's all these bold layers of color. The shapes and shades register as familiar, yet completely wrong for a mountain range. It almost just looks too deliberate to be random. Also, I don't know about you, but it kind of looks tasty. I don't know, looks like an ice cream flavor or something. The Salvador Dali Desert doesn't look like it belongs to Earth. Looks like it belongs in a dream. Found in southwestern Bolivia, this barren stretch sits at high altitude, scattered with wind-sculpted rocks that look unlike anything else on the planet. Salvador Dali never actually saw this place, but The comparison makes sense. The formations really do look like the distorted shapes from his paintings. A tree made of stone boulders that lean in impossible balances. The most well-known is the stone tree, a narrow trunk supported by a wide crown, like it was carved to be some sort of modern art piece, only of course it wasn't. The desert is silent, dry, mostly lifeless. There are no animals, no buildings, no sounds except the wind, and that just adds to the surreal atmosphere. This place looks unreal. It's called Pumukale. It looks like it's covered in snow, but it's not. What you're looking at is actually solid white stone. See, over thousands of years, hot springs rich in calcium have flowed down the hillside, leaving behind thick mineral deposits that formed into these terraces. The result is a kind of frozen waterfall with bright white steps in these small pools of pale blue water. It looks cold, but it's actually warm to the touch. That contrast is what makes it so strange to walk through. You're standing in what looks like an icy landscape, but there's no ice, and everything is shaped so neatly it almost feels like it must have been created intentionally. The pools are perfectly spaced, the steps look almost evenly cut, but it's all just water and time. It's no surprise that people have been coming here for thousands of years. The ancient city of Hierapolis was built right next to it, and people believed the waters had healing powers. And I can't blame them. Even with crowds around, the layout makes it feel calm and kind of untouched. It doesn't look like any other landscape in the region, or really on the entire planet. Just off the coast of Zakynthos, Greece, there's something strange sitting on the sea floor. It looks like the remains of a sunken city. There are stone pavements, round columns, big flat slabs arranged in what look like neat rows. Divers first thought they discovered some forgotten ancient port or town, but it turns out it's not actually the case. These shapes were formed by natural gas seeps in the ocean floor. Over time, the minerals hardened into these perfectly round and flat structures that just happened to look like parts of a building. Even with that explanation though, it's hard not to question what you're seeing. The geometry feels too deliberate. The slabs connect at right angles. Some of the circular shapes look exactly like carved bases for columns. There are no walls or statues or tools, but your brain still wants it to be ruins. The water here is so clear and shallow too that you can see the whole formation from up above, which only adds to the effect. The USS Cyclops was this massive American naval vessel that disappeared without a trace in 1918. It was carrying over 300 crew members and a hefty load of manganese ore from the Caribbean to Baltimore, and it vanished somewhere again in the Bermuda Triangle. It's one of the most baffling disappearances in naval history, and what makes it so mysterious is that this wasn't just a random ship lost at sea. It was a huge ship with a solid reputation. It was part of the US Navy during World War II. The Cyclops had been a workhorse for the Navy for years, but when it set out from Barbados in March of 1918, something obviously went wrong. It didn't check in when it was supposed to, and no one heard from it again. The ship was huge, 541 feet long, and it was designed to withstand the rough seas, so it's hard to believe it could just sink without a trace. No wreckage was ever found. Some think a freak storm or a mechanical failure could have caused it to sink. Others believe the ship was sabotaged, maybe by enemies during the war, but because the thing disappeared somewhere in the Bermuda Triangle, some people of course think something stranger may have happened. In 1587, a group of English settlers landed on Roanoke Island, which is off the coast of modern-day North Carolina. They were sent to establish a permanent colony, but when a supply ship returned in 1590, they were gone, completely vanished. The settlement was empty, not a single person was left behind. There wasn't even any sign of a struggle. It was as if the whole colony had never even been there in the first place. But they had been. There was a clue that remained. The only sign of them was Croatoan, carved into a tree, the word. Now, the thing is, Croatoan was the name of a nearby island and also the name of a Native American tribe in the area. So some believe the settlers may have tried to integrate with the tribe, but why would they leave behind such a cryptic message? Could they have been forced to leave by some hostile force, or did they just abandon the colony altogether? Maybe they just moved further inland, but then why did they leave no trace of where they went? Of course, there's also the theory that something much stranger happened. Some people wonder the settlers didn't vanish into the woods or the sea at all, but rather slipped into some other dimension, like a glitch in the fabric of time or space. Could Roanoke have been one of those spots in history where a tear in reality caused an entire settlement to disappear? Now, I will admit that this one may be a bit of a stretch, but I do think it's kind of fascinating, so I feel like it's worth adding here. You might not even know this, but at one point in US history there were $1,000 bills. The US Treasury printed $1,000 notes. These bills were mainly used for huge bank transfers and business deals, not something people would really carry around in their wallet. They were officially discontinued in 1969, along with other high-value bills like $500 and even $5,000 notes. But a lot of these old bills have just disappeared. The US Treasury estimates that millions of dollars worth of these $1,000 bills are still out there somewhere, but where? I mean, are they all hidden away in private collections? Maybe, but there are some conspiracy theories here too. Some believe that certain bills were deliberately destroyed or hidden by the government to keep the true extent of the nation's wealth under wraps. Others think that the bills might still be circulating under the radar in the hands of shadowy people and underground deals. Next is a very strange phenomenon called the Taos hum, a low-frequency sound that can only be heard by a small percentage of people. But for those who do hear it, it's maddening. This hum is mostly heard around Taos, New Mexico, but there have been reports from all over the world of similar sounds in other locations like parts of England, Canada, and Japan. The hum is described as this low rumbling sound, like a distant diesel engine running constantly. But when investigators try to find the source, well, they can't. It's not coming from machinery or anything else that can be easily identified. People who hear it often report feeling headaches and insomnia though. Scientists have thrown out theories like tinnitus, which is an ear condition that can cause ringing in the ears, but this isn't really a ringing sound. Some wonder if the hum could be related to electromagnetic fields in the area or seismic activity in the Earth's crust, but some people believe the Taos hum may be stranger, caused by interdimensional energy shifting through our world because of some tear in the fabric of reality, a hint of a parallel universe bleeding through. In 1966, two Brazilian men, Manuel Pereira de Cruz and Miguel Jose Viana, were found dead on a hilltop wearing lead masks, the kind used to shield from radiation. A cop found their bodies after they'd gone missing. The men were lying side by side, there were no signs of a struggle, and there was a small bottle of water next to them. But the masks, well, nobody could figure out what those were about. They were also carrying a note that looked like instructions for some sort of ritual, mentioning radiation and how to use the masks. The whole thing made it seem like they were about to do some sort of experiment, but no one could figure out what. Were they part of some secret cult? Were they trying to contact aliens? Or were they mixed up in some government experiment? Nobody knows, and no one ever found out how they died. Alright, this one's a bit of a strange rabbit hole. It revolves around a movie that doesn't actually exist, but has a bizarre legend attached to it. So there's this film that supposedly starred the actor Sinbad. If you're like me, you know him from the Arnold Schwarzenegger classic Jingle All the Way. But some also remember Sinbad having been in this movie called Shazam in the 90s, where he played a genie. The premise is that he granted wishes and caused chaos in typical 90s kids movie fashion. A lot of people swear they saw this movie, renting it or watching reruns of it on TV. The only problem is no one can find it now. For years, people have tried to track down any trace of this Shazam movie, but it doesn't seem to exist anywhere in any record. Sinbad himself has even come out and said like, yeah, I never made that movie. And yet, a surprising number of people are adamant that they remember it. It's become one of the more popular Mandela effects, where a large number of people remember something one way, which turns out to be different, or in this case, not even existing at all. So, what's going on here? Well, one theory is that people are confusing it with another movie called Kazam, starring Shaquille O'Neal as the genie, which was released in 1996. And yeah, I can see people getting confused about the name, but I mean, are all of these people really confusing Sinbad with Shaq? That doesn't really add up. I mean, it's possible, but what if there's a parallel universe where things are just slightly different, and in that universe, There really is a movie called Shazam starring Sinbad, and this very second, there's another version of me filming a video being like, damn, I could have sworn there was a movie called Kazam back in the 90s starring Shaq, but nobody can find it. Next up is Bermeja, a whole island that completely vanished. This one's wild because it really was a real place, a tiny island in the Gulf of Mexico near the Yucatan Peninsula. You could find it on old maps, and even the Mexican government used to claim that it existed. In fact, it was officially documented as part of Mexico's territory, right in the area where they had a territorial dispute with the US over oil rights. Well, in 1997, a Mexican Navy survey came out saying the island was no longer there. They couldn't find it with any of their modern equipment, even though it was supposed to be there, of course. Having been marked on maps for hundreds of years, the island seemed to have just disappeared though. Well, your first thought is that it probably just sank into the ocean, but that's highly unlikely because the area was relatively shallow and there's actually no sign of the island ever having existed in the first place. So what are some other possibilities? Well, some people think it was deliberately erased from maps as part of some secret government deal. Others say cartographers had been wrong the entire time, that the island was either never there or is a misidentified rock or sandbar that got labeled as an island. But there's a more fringe idea too, one that ties into the title of this video, of course. The idea that Bermeja never existed in the first place, and what we're actually dealing with is a glitch or shift between parallel universes. Some say it's like the island slipped through the cracks of time and was never meant to be in our reality at all. Now let's talk about Flight 19, one of the most famous disappearances in aviation history, and of course, it's tied to the Bermuda Triangle. This incident goes back to December 5th of 1945. Flight 19 was a training mission for 5 US Navy bombers flying out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Everything was going well until something went horribly wrong. The pilots lost their bearings and they got disoriented. According to reports, they were never able to get a proper fix on their location, and things quickly went from bad to worse. One of the pilots even reported that the compass wasn't working right, but the entire squadron of 5 planes just vanished, like they were swallowed up by the ocean. No wreckage was ever found, and the Navy couldn't figure out exactly what happened. And on top of that, a rescue plane was sent out to search for them. That plane also went missing. No trace of it was ever found either. The story just adds more mystery when consider how much equipment was searching and still nothing showed up. People started speculating, of course. Some think it was probably a simple navigation error or mechanical failure, nothing too crazy, but others believe that the Bermuda Triangle was involved, that maybe this mysterious region of the ocean is some sort of portal or electromagnetic anomaly that messes with navigation systems, sucking planes and ships into some other dimension or an alternate reality. Others go even further, saying that UFOs or time warps are to blame, but at the end of the day, no one knows what really happened to Flight 19, which is exactly why it's still talked about to this day.
At number 5, the Mandela Effect is a mind-bending puzzle that thrusts us into the intriguing realm of collective false memories. Fiona Broom's encounter with the phenomenon in 2010 sent shockwaves through our understanding of memory and reality. The curious case of Nelson Mandela's demise, while many recalling it occurring in the 1980s while he was imprisoned, challenges our grasp on historical facts. But it doesn't stop there. Classic tales like Snow White and Star Wars warp our perceptions collectively, as we mistakenly remember Mirror Mirror on the Wall and Luke, I am your father, when the actual lines are subtly different. The Berenstein Bears, once spelt with an E, now boasts an A, while Oscar Mayer has taken a new dimension with its A instead of an E. These anomalies raise questions about parallel universes and reality shifts. Are our false memories glimpses into alternate dimensions, or simply quirks of the human cognition? At number 4, our own simulated universe. In 2018, researchers embarked on a colossal computer simulation endeavor, fashioning entirely new universes amid diverse circumstances. Now, what they unearthed was nothing short of mind-bending. These parallel realities could emerge even with dark energy levels starkly deviating from our own. As study co-author Pascal Elahi eloquently noted, quote, "Even in universes with 300 times as much dark energy as ours, life found a way," end quote. This revelation underscores the resilience of life amidst the tumultuous cosmic dance. Elahi's insight took us deeper into the cosmic rabbit hole. Accelerated expansion fueled by dark energy appear to have a negligible sway over the birth of stars and the emergence of life-bearing worlds. Consequently, the existence of planets teeming with life within alternate universes became a tantalizing possibility. At number 3 is the third man syndrome, a phenomenon that often accompanies harrowing accidents, raising eerie questions about the possibility of parallel universes intersecting with our reality. See, victims of life-threatening situations report an inexplicable presence offering guidance and encouragement. Is this a celestial entity watching over us, or perhaps an alternate version of ourselves from a parallel universe reaching out to prevent our own demise? The widespread accounts of this phenomenon add to its mystique. Could this be a glimpse into the multiverse where infinite variations of our existence coexist? The mysterious signs of parallel universes manifest in these moments of despair, challenging our understanding of reality. While we can't definitively explain third man syndrome, the comfort it provides to those facing tragedy is undeniable, offering a glimmer of hope in the mysterious tapestry of existence. At number 2, black holes or black gateways. Black holes, those mysterious cosmic entities, have long fascinated scientists and sparked intriguing theories. One theory, first proposed by Mr. Stephen Hawking himself, suggests that black holes might serve as gateways to other dimensions or parallel universes. The idea here is that whatever enters a black hole isn't obliterated, but rather transported to an entirely different realm. Now, we know that black holes indeed possess 2 openings, and this fact alone lends credibility to the notion that it might connect to separate realities. Imagine the possibilities. What if these mysterious phenomena are cosmic wormholes leading to parallel dimensions? It's a concept that challenges our understanding of the universe and beckons us to explore the unknown. And while the idea of volunteering into a venture into a black hole may seem far-fetched, it's a testament to humanity's unquenchable curiosity. Who knows what secrets these cosmic enigmas might hold, and what remarkable discoveries await those brave enough to embark on such a cosmic journey. And at number 1, the Anita experiment, the scientific discovery that proves single-handedly the existence of parallel universes. The claim begins with a hook that would tingle the spidey senses of any sci-fi enthusiast. Imagine a remote research station in Antarctica where scientists diligently hunt for cosmic rays. Now, that's intriguing enough on its own, but it gets even better. See, naturally they had their instruments facing the sky, but then these researchers suddenly detect not 1, but 2 signals shooting out of the ground beneath them, defying all logic. See, these rays of neutrinos are supposed to come from supernova, so it's highly improbable that the rays are passing through the Earth without coming into contact with a single particle of matter, only to land on a tiny weather balloon. To make sense of this, scientists delved into over 40 papers offering a buffet of explanations. Dark matter, elusive particles called sterile neutrinos, and then, the grandest of them all, a parallel universe. Essentially a mirror image of ours, but where time runs backwards. Imagine that. This audacious idea isn't pulled out of thin air either. It's rooted in actual science, a theorem which hints that alongside our universe, an antimatter universe stretches backward through time before the Big Bang. But let's tap the brakes here because a more down-to-earth theory has surfaced. That's right, hold your antimatter horses, because as it turns out, it's more likely that these signals were simply reflected off of ice or skipped off of subglacial lakes. The truth, it seems, is more grounded, reflecting high-energy particles, not parallel dimensions. Sorry, y'all. I mean, unless you want to go ahead and put away Occam's razor. At number 10, a multiverse created in the lab. In 2013, researchers delved into the realms of parallel universes at the University of Maryland, College Park, and Towson University. Through an unconventional experiment involving metamaterials reminiscent of invisibility cloaks, they sparked the birth of multiple universes within a lab-crafted multiverse. These alternate realms, referred to as Minkowski spacetimes, share a striking resemblance to our own, but they elegantly incorporate time as the 4th dimension, aligning neatly with Einstein's special relativity. Astonishingly, the setup behind this cosmic wizardry is surprisingly straightforward, relying on a solution of cobalt immersed in kerosene. It's a captivating testament to human ingenuity, demonstrating that we can, in a sense, engineer our own universes, offering tantalizing hints of the existence of parallel ones. If you're enjoying the video so far, please support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Most Amazing, and ringing that notification bell. At number 9, quantum immortality. Concept born from the mind-bending world of quantum mechanics challenges our understanding of existence itself. In this thought experiment turned intriguing hypothesis, Max Tegmark delves into the idea that we might encounter multiple demises throughout our lives. So picture this. With every brush with mortality, our consciousness dances across the multiverse, slipping into the nearest timeline where our demise was narrowly avoided. It's a notion that, at first glance, may seem kind of like science fiction, but it has gained traction among those who claim to have undergone these shifts, myself included. The scientific community remains skeptical, dismissing it as a mere fantastical notion. However, for some, the reality has been altered in ways they can't explain. They recount near unaliving experiences as evidence, pointing to moments where they distinctly felt the universe pivot around them. The shift is often unnoticed until later on, leaving individuals to trace subtle differences in their new reality, like the ripples of earlier choices echoing through their existence. At number 8 is the glitch in the Matrix. Have you ever pondered the enigmatic signs of parallel universes lurking within the annals of history? The notion that we may inhabit a cosmic computer simulation governed by these unseen puppeteers in a parallel realm is as intriguing as it is unsettling. Consider the perplexing incidents that defy logical explanation. Objects that inexplicably vanish only to reappear, like my cell phone, as if manipulated by an unforeseen digital hand. Witnesses recounting the same individual in different locales simultaneously, or their sudden disappearances and inexplicable reappearance after extensive searches, raising unsettling questions about our reality. Then there are the anomalies in our mundane surroundings, where everyday objects undergo inexplicable transformations. Time itself, our constant companion, appears to warp and falter, with reports of time slips and eerie time freezes defying our understanding. Even more disconcerting, some of these glitches have been captured on camera, offering tantalizing glimpses into the possible fissures of our simulated universe. Are we all but unwitting pawns in a grand experiment? The prospect is both fascinating and terrifying. And to those with the unseen controllers, if you're listening, well, you know what to do. At number 7, the cosmic bruise. In 2017, cosmologists stumbled upon a cosmic anomaly that sent shockwaves through the scientific community, the enigmatic cold spot in the universe. Now, it's not just any cosmic bruise. It could be a lingering mark from a cataclysmic event, a collision between our universe and another. As Professor Tom Shanks of Durham University Center of Extragalactic Astronomy suggests, this cold spot might be the fossilized signature of an interdimensional encounter, a moment when our reality clashed with one of the countless others that make up this cosmic tapestry. What's truly mind-boggling is that this isn't an isolated incident. Researchers have discovered not one, but 4 of these mysterious bruises. This revelation implies that our universe has been involved in multiple inter-universal rendezvous throughout its existence. The implications are staggering. They hint at the existence of a multiverse, a mind-bending landscape of alternate realities where anything might be possible. At number 6, the Large Hadron Collider. Last year, the behemoth of science, the Large Hadron Collider, roared back to life after 3 years of meticulous upgrades. But what's all the hype? Well, it's not just about smashing particles together anymore. It's about probing the very fabric of the universe. The Higgs boson, the elusive God particle, is on the menu, and dark matter is the dessert. And it might just be the tool to unlock the secrets of a parallel universe. How, you ask? Well, it's all about those sneaky extra dimensions. In the world of theoretical physics, they're like hidden rooms in the cosmic mansion. Picture this. If extra dimensions do exist, there should be heavier versions of standard particles called Kaluza-Klein states. These lookalikes, but with more heft, could be the breadcrumbs leading us into parallel universe. If the Large Hadron Collider detectors spot a Z-negative or W-negative like particle with a mass of 100 times or greater, it could be the clue we've been waiting for. So brace yourself, because with the Large Hadron Collider, we might just peel back the layers of reality and find the signs of a parallel universe.
McDonald's is best known for being a quick spot that doesn't break the bank. But have you ever heard of a McDonald's that was a bank? Well, if you haven't, you're about to. With one user on TripAdvisor referring to it as the classiest McDonald's in the world, this one-off variation is located in, bear with me, Kristiansand, Norway. While there is not much information of this particular franchise location to be found online, it is open to the public and boasts a classic McDonald's menu, as well as a few more items specific to McDonald's in Norway, such as the home home-style juicy burger, pasta salad with chicken or ham, hot wings, oatmeal with raisins, the chicken premier burger, and something called a McToast. Because of its location, we of course have to assume that at one point many areas within the walls of what is now a cool place for a quick bite were strictly banned from the public, given that the restaurant once contained safes and vaults full of copious amounts of cash. Next on the list we have a McDonald's, an extremely popular mega capitalist McDonald's, laughably and ironically located directly outside the entrance to the Museum of Communism, located in Czechia, Prague. Now, honestly, in this instance, I'm surprised it wasn't banned from ever being open there in the first place. But it seems the Prager people have quite the sense of humor, as there is an ad posted outside of the museum that reads, "Museum of Communism," above the casino, right next to the McDonald's. So I guess they really are above capitalism. The McBarge, as it was once known, is next on the list. This creepily eerie and now abandoned location was once the forefront of innovation for the franchise. When the floating restaurant was opened in 1986, it was a place for sea dwellers and land lovers alike to indulge in what seems to be everyone's common ground: cheap food and good scenery. However, the magic of the marina-based Maiden didn't last long, as only 5 years after, in 1991, the new owner of the grounds forced the boat to depart from the docks, making it rather difficult to keep the business booming. Since the McBarge's departure from the McDocks of Vancouver, it has been anchored and abandoned just near British Columbia. Since then, many people have been going out to see this abandoned national treasure, and there has even been some public interest in refurbishing and reopening the restaurant as well. Believe it or not, New Mexico wasn't actually the first place to have a space-themed establishment. The OG extraterrestrial spacecraft turned restaurant was actually located in Alconbury, Cambridge in England, and was built in 1990 and converted into a McDonald's shortly after in 1993. But much like the McBarge, the adventure was short-lived, as it shut down just 7 years later in the year 2000. The UFO-inspired structure adorned with the golden arches we all know and love was, at the time, the definition of space-aged architecture. The restaurant showcased a computerized ordering system and a drive-thru that often queued all the way out into the main road. A former employee by the name of David Meredith described the restaurant as having a gloomy atmosphere, saying that although it was space-age, the lights were dim, and whoever had crafted the structure, it seems, had forgotten to add windows. While this location is not necessarily banned, it is unable to be reached by the public, or anyone else for that matter, as it was sadly demolished in 2008 after having been abandoned since its closure just 8 years prior. And that brings us to our final location in the infamous Guantanamo Bay, an area best known for being home to the largest detention camp under the control of the United States and the United States military. Since 2002, roughly 780 detainees have been held at the center. However, in a report released in 2023, it seems that number has since dwindled to just 30 persons who are still being kept within its walls. To enter Guantanamo Bay would require area clearance and a special kind of government-issued passport. So you might be wondering, how did a McDonald's end up there, and why? Well, the only McDonald's in Cuba opened in 1986 and has since been a staple of home to the military personnel residing there while working for the US government. And as long as the US continues to exercise its jurisdiction and control over the Bay Area, I'm guessing it's here to stay. Now, while it's no secret that American soldiers tend to enjoy some McDonald's every now and then, it appears the prisoners living on the base might too, as there have been rumors of inmates being offered Happy Meals in exchange for their cooperation. Of course, this area is completely banned to members of the public, so don't be expecting to indulge in any Big Macs or Happy Meals the next time you hit up Cuba. First up is a sit-down and drive-through McDonald's located in Samoa, also known as the most remote McDonald's in the world, sitting at an astounding 770 miles, or about 4,600,000 feet from the next nearest franchise location. The restaurant, which is located inside a 150-year-old colonial mansion on the small island country, features a McGaiga meal that costs £38, about $65 Canadian, and consists of 2 Big Mac medium meals, 2 Quarter Pounder small meals, 2 deluxe cheeseburgers, and 2 8-piece McNuggets. Honestly, not a bad deal. You might think it difficult to sustain the franchise on such a small island, but the reality is quite the opposite in fact. Locals and tourists alike rejoice in the little slice of processed heaven and have kept the business booming since its opening in 2000. The restaurant is also a notable hotspot for the island's rugby team, with players enjoying the fast food delights so much that they were actually banned from partaking in such delicacies while competing overseas, as their coach feared their inevitable overindulgence would ruin their chances at winning the World Cup. Next up, we have the Arizona Aqua Arch Beauty, located in Sedona, Arizona. While it might not be banned, you just might miss it, as when the restaurant was constructed in 1993 just off of Route 98A, its existence was contingent on the fact that the restaurant blended seamlessly with the natural beauty of the 48th state. While at first this was a bit of a turnoff for developers, the collaboration with the state's city council and planning and zoning commissions actually turned out to be a quite lucrative one. The restaurant became yet another reason for tourists to make their way to the Sandy State, and those who were already there just had to check out this one-off, off-colored location and lay their eyes on the blue-green arches they had heard so much about before heading off on their next adventure. And that brings us to our next location, in New Mexico. Fun fact, while New Mexico is well known for being a hotbed for extraterrestrial action and activity, it is also home to one of the most out-of-this-world McDonald's locations known to man. And possibly others? In case you haven't guessed by now, this McDonald's was built in the shape of a giant, unidentified flying object, or extraterrestrial spaceship, if you will. The UFO-shaped McDonald's graced the sunny state of New Mexico around 2011 and quickly became one of the coolest locations to date, and a huge tourist hotspot for Big Mac hoppers and alien enthusiasts alike. With its bright red lights and glowing golden arches, who knows what kind of creatures this thing attracts. Now, it might not be banned, but it does look like it has the opportunity to blast off into hyperspace, so if you were looking for an excuse to visit, well, there it is. Speaking of oddly shaped places to enjoy a nice hot meal served to you in a cardboard box, we have the plane-shaped McDonald's located in New Zealand. Well, it's not just plane-shaped, it's actually a decommissioned Douglas DC-3 aircraft, complete with an intact cockpit. While you can't actually order food from inside of the Big M emblem-adorned airliner, you can grab your food from the counters located in the more traditional restaurant next door, and then bring them over to enjoy an experience like never before. That's right, I'm talking about eating microwave food on an airplane. To be honest, I'm not quite sure how either airlines or fast food restaurants cook their food, but what I do know is that Douglas DC-3 has a fully refurbished interior, complete with big comfy red chairs and shiny metal tables, creating a dining experience like no other that can accommodate up to 20 patrons at a time. What's the coolest McDonald's you've ever been to? Let us know in the comments. Have you ever tried to go through a drive-thru without a car? Oh, yeah, me neither. Well, if you ever wanted to, this next location is the place to do it, as cars are strictly banned from this ski-through McDonald's located in Lidvallen Ski Resort, about 200 miles northwest of Stockholm in Sweden. Also known as McSki, the newly popular location has actually been around since about 1966, if you can believe it, and has been a staple for skiers and snowboarders alike. With McDonald's complete classic menu available for order, this pick-me-up pit stop is truly like no other, and as hitting the slopes can work up quite an appetite, I truly can't think of a better way to satisfy your hunger without cutting too much into your adrenaline-chasing chill time.
Next up today we have The Vanishing Hotel. A French couple traveling in the 1970s decided to stay at a quaint, seemingly out-of-place hotel in the countryside. The hotel and its staff appeared to belong to an earlier time, and the couple noted peculiarities such as the absence of telephones or modern amenities. I feel like that's a really big red flag. I don't know. No telephones at a hotel? What is this, Norman Bates? Upon trying to find the hotel again on a subsequent trip, it was nowhere to be found, and no one in the area could recall its existence, suggesting a possible slip into a parallel world. At our halfway point today, we have the interdimensional ring. A person reported finding a very unique ring that did not belong to them in their home. Despite thorough investigations, they could not trace the ring's origins or how it came into their possession. You just know that somebody in that household was getting accused of cheating in that moment. The mysterious ring appeared to possess unusual characteristics and design unlike any common jewelry. Its style did not match any known era or culture, which only deepened the mystery surrounding it. As the person wore the ring, peculiar incidents began to unfold. Objects in their home seemed to move independently, and time appeared to distort, with hours passing in what felt like minutes. On several occasions, the wearer wearer claimed to see fleeting glimpses of otherworldly landscapes or to hear whispers in an unrecognizable language. These experiences intensified the belief that the ring was not merely an object of unknown provenance, but a conduit to parallel dimensions, offering brief, disorienting peeks into these alternate realities that coexist with our own. Would you want a ring with that kind of power, or would you journey across the land to destroy it in a fiery pit? Next up, we have the flight into the future. In the 1930s, a British pilot claimed to have flown into a cloud bank only to emerge in what seemed to be the future. He described seeing unfamiliar aircraft and an altered landscape, but upon returning to his own time, he reported the incident, but unfortunately there was just no evidence to substantiate his experience. This story has been interpreted by some as a possible encounter with a time slip or a parallel dimension, but to me, it really is just giving Manifest. I don't know if you guys have seen that show, but it's crazy, and I feel like maybe that show was based on what happened here. I don't know. Next up today we have the quantum thought exercise, just simultaneously my favorite and least favorite on this entire list, because it stresses me out. While not an anecdote of an actual event, the quantum thought experiment is often associated with the idea of quantum immortality and is related to the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. Imagine a situation similar to the Schrodinger's cat experiment, where a physicist uses a potentially lethal mechanism that is triggered or not triggered based on a quantum event, like the decay of a radioactive atom. Okay, I know it sounds confusing. Stay with me, alright? In this thought experiment, every time the mechanism has a chance to be triggered, the universe would split, creating one reality where the physicist survives and another where they do not. However, the physicist, as an observer, would only ever experience the outcomes where they survive, hence the term quantum immortality. They would seemingly jump from one universe to another where they continue living, never experiencing their own death. The idea here is that, from the physicist's perspective, they might feel as though they are transitioning into different parallel universes where they continue to exist. It is a very mind-bending concept that suggests that our consciousness could persist in a multiverse, experiencing only those branches of reality where we survive. It's interesting, scary, unsettling. I don't know, that's just how I feel about this one. We have the alternate phases of Highway 167. There are accounts of people driving on familiar roads only to find themselves in completely unfamiliar landscapes or towns that just should not exist along their route. One particular story involves Highway 167, where drivers reported entering foggy patches and emerging into surroundings that appeared to be from a different time period or just a completely different reality, only to return to their known world upon retracing their route. It's just so creepy. I feel like we've talked about like a few specific scenarios that kind of deal with the same thing before. Just is so unsettling. I don't know, there's just something weird about that. Next up, we have the man who woke up in a different marriage. This story is about a man who claimed to have woken up next to a woman he recognized, but in a life that wasn't his. He had memories of life with another woman, his actual wife, but in this new reality he was married to an old girlfriend. His job was different, and even his car in the driveway was not the one that he remembered. Despite extensive searches, he found no evidence of his former life and began to question his sanity until he suddenly returned to his original world with everything back to normal. This does sound like an absolute nightmare, but it also, like, you know, sometimes people think like, what would have happened if like things went this way or whatever, so maybe it would be kind of cool to get like a glimpse. Okay, and finally today we have the non-existent hotel, back with another strange hotel experience. This one starts off with a businessman traveling in Europe in the 1970s who claims to have stayed at a beautiful old-fashioned hotel. Nothing wrong with that. Upon returning to the city years later, he was unable to find the hotel. In fact, there were actually no records or evidence that it ever even existed. He even checked his old receipts and documents, which all referenced the hotel, yet no one in the city had any memory of such a place. This led him to believe that he might have spent a night in a parallel dimension. Imagine, you went to this mystery hotel and later realized you were staying in room 1408. Could you imagine? Oh, I would think that my whole life was a lie after that. Starting off this list today, we have the disappearance of the L8 blimp crew. The L8 blimp incident remains one of the most baffling unsolved mysteries from World War II. The blimp was initially on a patrol mission to scout for enemy submarines along the California coast. As it returned, something very unforeseen occurred. Observers on the ground noticed the blimp's erratic behavior before its descent, yet no distress signals were sent from the crew. Upon investigation, all control systems within the blimp were found operational, and personal belongings of the crew were still on board, suggesting a very sudden and unexplained disappearance. What makes this case even more intriguing is that the blimp managed to navigate and land in a densely populated area without causing significant damage or injury, almost as if it were being controlled or guided by unseen hands. The absence of any struggle or attempt to communicate by the crew has fueled speculation about paranormal activities, including theories of abduction or unintentional travel to another dimension. Despite various investigations and inquiries, no conclusive explanation has been provided, leaving the fate of the crew a mystery and a source of speculation about the potential for anomalies or breaches in our understanding of space and time. Next up on our list today, we have the Liverpool time slips. So this is something I didn't know, but apparently there is a phenomenon of time slips in Liverpool, particularly around the area known as Bold Street. These experiences typically involve individuals or groups of people feeling as though they have momentarily stepped back in time, encountering surroundings, people, and objects that appear to be from a different era. In the case of a policeman named Frank, he described seeing cars, fashion, and shop fronts that were all distinctly from the 1960s, a very stark contrast to the 1990s environment that he had come from. Even more intriguingly, upon returning to the present, he could find no logical explanation for his experience, as everything in his surroundings had returned to normal. Such incidents raise questions about the nature of time and reality. Are these time slips just hallucinations, or do they offer a glimpse into a parallel universe or an alternate reality that momentarily overlaps with our own? While definitive scientific explanations remain elusive, these experiences continue to provoke curiosity, suggesting a world that is much more complex and mysterious than our conventional understanding may allow. Next up, we have the mystery of Gadianton Canyon. In 1972, the journey of 4 university women took an eerie turn when they opted for a shortcut through Gadianton Canyon, hoping to shorten their trip back to Southern Utah University from Nevada. As they ventured deep into the canyon, the familiar desert landscape transformed inexplicably into an alien terrain, marked by an unsettling quiet that blanketed the area. The road beneath them changed to gravel, and the surroundings became increasingly unfamiliar and very foreboding. The group encountered structures that defied conventional architecture, featuring angles and materials that seemed out of place and time. Most unsettling were the egg-shaped vehicles with elongated, opaque windows, unlike any cars or machinery known at the time, seemingly parked or abandoned. These elements contributed to a palpable sense of dislocation, and there was an overwhelming sense of dread. Despite the urge to explore or understand their bizarre surroundings, fear and survival instincts prevailed, prompting the girls to get out of there as fast as humanly possible. Miraculously, as they retraced their route, the surreal landscape gave way to the familiar high desert scenery of southern Utah, though no clear boundary marked the transition. Subsequent attempts to locate the strange road and its surroundings ended in vain, as no maps or local accounts could verify the existence of the places and objects they reported seeing. This very strange experience led the women, and those who later heard their story, to speculate that they might have inadvertently crossed into a parallel dimension, a brief glimpse into an alternate reality abruptly encountered and then left behind.
This next one goes back to 1943, in the middle of World War II. The story is that US Navy tried to make a ship invisible to radar at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard. The ship was the USS Eldridge, but according to people who claim to have witnessed it, something much stranger happened. That's putting it lightly. Something cosmically horrific happened. They say the ship vanished completely and then reappeared hundreds of miles away in Norfolk, Virginia, and when it came back, the crew was not well. First off, there were a ton of them missing, and many who had shown back up with the ship were quite literally with the ship. They'd fused into the metal. The lucky ones just went insane, claiming to have seen something on the other side. The Navy has always denied that anything like this happened, but the story came to light through a man named Carl Allen, who sent letters detailing the events later. Of course, he was written off for being unstable, but the story took off anyway. There's even an X-Files episode about this one. To be fair, X-Files goes in some incredibly weird directions, so this is in no way adding validity to the story, but it does go to show just how much the Philadelphia experiment, as it came to be called, was talked about. What's interesting about this story is how specific it is, too. It doesn't really feel like your typical urban legend. It sounds more like someone trying to explain something that they don't fully understand. Who knows, maybe something strange really did happen that day. Maybe there really was an experiment that caused a breach in the fabric of reality. In the small town of Taos, New Mexico, people have been hearing a strange sound since the early 90s, a low-frequency hum, like a distant engine running, a hum that never seems to go away. Not everyone hears it, but for those who do, it's constant. Where does it come from? Well, that's the mystery. But the people who hear it report headaches, insomnia, and just overall dread, like something's just off. The government has sent scientists to investigate. They've recorded the environment, tested the soil, the air, everything, but they couldn't find what was actually causing it. The hum isn't picked up by microphones or equipment, so it's basically impossible to study. It's almost like it's happening inside the victims' bodies, which is about as terrifying as it sounds, no pun intended. Now, there are theories as to what this could be. Electromagnetic interference, underground drilling, some sort of secret military technology, but is it possible people are hearing something even stranger than that? Like an echo from another dimension? Maybe the hum isn't a sound at all, but more of a frequency from another place, something leaking in. Just a thought. This story popped up on Reddit a couple years back from a user who deleted their account shortly after posting. Here's what they wrote. I've lived in the same apartment for about 4 years. It's nothing fancy, 1 bedroom, open kitchen, small balcony, but about 2 weeks ago I came home from work and noticed something weird. The door handle felt different, like it was just slightly lower than I remembered. Same styles, same lock, just off. When I walked in, everything looked normal at first, but my keys were in a different bowl than I usually leave them. I thought maybe I was just tired, but then I noticed my bookshelf. There were 2 books on it that I don't own. One of them was a collection of short stories by Ray Bradbury that I'd been meaning to buy but hadn't yet. The other was a guidebook for a city I've never been to. I asked my girlfriend if she bought them over. She said no. I called my landlord just to be sure no one had entered while I was at work. He checked. Nothing. Since then, a few other tiny things have changed. A painting in the hallway is an inch higher. My phone background changed to a photo I don't remember taking. I know how this sounds, but it feels like I came back to a version of my life that's almost the same, just not quite. Guys, I can't speak to the validity of stories like this on Reddit. If you are experiencing things like this, go to a doctor. Just, some advice. In December of 1900, 3 lighthouse keepers stationed on the remote Flannan Isles off the coast of Scotland vanished without a trace. When a relief crew arrived after a storm had delayed them, they found the lighthouse empty. Everything inside was undisturbed. Clocks had stopped, meals were left on the table, and one of the men's coats was still hanging on a hook. The only clue was a logbook entry mentioning a violent storm, but the weather had actually been pretty calm the day they supposedly wrote it. No bodies were ever found. The official explanation is that a massive wave may have swept them out to sea, but that doesn't add up. Why were there no signs of struggle, no debris, nothing washed up? It was like they just stepped off the island and vanished. For decades, amateur astronomers and conspiracy theorists have pointed to something strange orbiting Earth, an unidentified object known as the Black Knight satellite. The story really kicked off in the 50s when both the US and Soviet Union detected something unusual in orbit. It wasn't one of theirs, It didn't match the movement of any known satellites at the time. And then there's the really weird part. In the 70s, images taken during a NASA mission seemed to show this strange, jagged object in orbit, and it didn't look like space junk or any known satellite. Some believe it's been up there for 13,000 years, sent by an ancient civilization or aliens as a monitoring device. Nikola Tesla himself claimed to have received a repeating signal from space in the 1890s, and some now connect that to this. No one knows exactly what it is. NASA says the object in the photos is just a thermal blanket that came loose during a mission, but that explanation doesn't sit well with people who've followed the story for decades. If it really is something watching us from above, then who or what put it there, and how long have they been watching?